How many four-letter words can I use on that?
Trying to switch to a double. Cheddar is driving. Nothing yet. Takedown. Michael Cheddar.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
Hale trying to sink him. He does. Maximus Hale the fall.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, and with me today is Utah Valley head coach Adam Hall. Coach, good to talk to you again. Good to catch up. As we were just talking before we came on the air, the aftermath of NCAAs has really not slowed down for you. I can only imagine the exit meetings, what's going on for next season, the summer coming up, the U.S. Open, et cetera, et cetera. Have you even had a chance to breathe yet?
I had a couple days. First of all, again, thanks for having me on, Nick. This last week, we got back to working out. We have some guys getting ready for the U.S. Open, and I told our staff, like, I'm not going to be there Thursday, Friday. Like, I'm going to peace out. It's my kids' spring break, and we did like a staycation, did a bunch of cool things like in the local Utah area, and there's a lot out here to do, and so like dug some fossils and went to, a couple different outdoor gardens, and it was cool. It was really, good because like literally the day after NCAAs, it was like you're preparing for the portal, you're preparing for end of the year meetings. And if you're doing it right, you have to have closure on the season, and you're reviewing everything while it's fresh. And I'd say the first couple weeks after NCAAs were really, really busy.
When you guys got back from Philadelphia, what was the first thing you did coming off the plane? Did you immediately start making phone calls like, all right, we have to do X, Y, and Z to close out the season? Had that? How are those following 24 hours for you guys?
So we got back, and it was just like decompressing, unloading, and just like, hey, let's take the rest of this day, and then just know like we're going to be hitting it on Monday. And I know like nobody wants to do that, but we have some things we have to follow up with. And honestly, the next week we started meeting with a lot of our starters from the previous year, and a number of them didn't go to the national tournament, obviously, but they had enough time to recover and really process their entire year and what they wanted to do moving forward. And before we addressed everybody else on the team, and we were busy the next week after NCAAs.
Well, it was a successful tournament. I know you always want to focus on what you can improve for the next season, but overall, you guys were a great story in Philadelphia. Terrell Barraclough highlighted you guys pretty much all season long, coming back home closer to Utah, or going to Utah Valley, coming back closer to home, I should say. Became your guys' 6th All-American in program history. He finished 5th, ended with a win. Just, I guess to start out, just walk me through his tournament. What was that experience like for him, considering, people who know his story? Was at Penn State for a while, was a backup, got some spot duty in duels, was really highly touted guy, but he got his chance to shine this year with you guys at Utah Valley, and he really made it count in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's an amazing story. Just like you said, he had built himself up and done really well, being a go-to guy for them while he was at Penn State, and would fill in. I mean, I think the duel that he actually wrestled Rutgers, he wrestled Turley, and I think he weighed in light and wrestled up a weight class. They kind of moved him around just where they needed. And, he just wanted his shot, and he chose us over several great schools. And I think it was just a mix of him wanting to come home, number one, and number two, just wanting to make a name for himself at a smaller program and creating some history for himself. And specifically in the national tournament, he did a great job just dealing with adversity. And, we went there to win a national title and didn't, as quite a few people do, they don't end up accomplishing their goals. But I'm glad he ended his tournament with a win. And to be honest, like, I'd say the inexperience showed at times where, he made some uncharacteristic moves that kind of cost him 2 matches that were like literally decided in the last 3 seconds. It was just kind of soul crushing, but he did a great job. Specifically being able to bounce back in the round of 12, and then also the very next match after getting kind of that monkey off his back, having wrestled Cam Amin for the third time, and he was up big and got dumped to his back, and then like still had about a minute and change left to, have to manage the match and wrestle through it, and did a great job doing that. And like I said, finished his career with a win, and he's already right back to it. We gave him a little bit of time, and last week he was just helping guys out in the room, and he's like, I'm itching. I'm like, yeah, just give it another week. You'll really be itching this, this coming week. And he's back on it, signed up for the US Open. Cause I knew with like how short his career actually was, like competitively, where he was actually the guy, that he would likely want to keep competing to just see where he's at. Because I mean, he has a degree from Penn State in biomedical engineering, and he also is getting his MBA in 1 year here. So he's finishing up this summer, and he's going to do really great things in life. And I said, look, a lot of those opportunities will be there. We have a ton of connections around the program and people who want to hire you, and people that we can connect you with for really, really great opportunities. But this opportunity to, one, compete, and two, be a part of the program is, I won't say short-lived. It's a small window where you're relevant and you want to continue to do this. And if you do wholeheartedly, then let's do it.
When you talk about his future, and again, he ended with a win. I think it was a nice little. You mentioned the monkey off his back, and I know he didn't achieve his goal of a national title, which I know you guys wanted for the program, especially for his only season. But he will be around. When you see his immediate future, is the plan right now just this Olympic cycle, see how he does in the lead up towards LA 2028? Is there a longer term plan in place, or what do you envision his future at Utah Valley like?
Yeah, I think for him, it's just take it year to year and tournament to tournament. That's honestly what we did like this year, just match to match, tournament to tournament, duel to duel, just trying to stay present, stay in the moment, and can't control anything next year and 3 years or whatever that looks like. And, you don't know if your heart's going to be in it next year and 2 years or whatever that looks like. And so for him, just being able to transition to freestyle, the Open will be a pretty big test. I mean, some of the guys that have already signed up, and I imagine with 74 kilos is often a hot weight class, like 65, 74, 86. Those are some hot weight classes. And, I'm sure some other guys are going to be signing up soon, but you're also seeing some new blood come through. And, I think some of these older guys are on the tail end, and, some maybe retiring soon or already have retired. And the next wave of studs are coming through, and it'll be really exciting to see him compete with the likes of Quincy Monday or a David Carr. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Just, I know he's coming off of the NCAA tournament, and being able to bounce back quickly is I think in his favor, because his conditioning's still really good and he got some rest time. And we'll see.
I'm glad you brought up his academics too, because he was named Big 12 Scholar Athlete of the Year, and that went along with 5 total Scholar All-Americans for you guys by the NWCA this year. I know I believe you told me this last year. You were very high on basically preaching to these guys, hey, we want to build a great wrestling program here, but we have a lot of opportunities. We're like I think you say it's like the Silicon Valley of the Midwest, or not quite going out to California. A lot of opportunity outside of the wrestling room. What did that mean to you to see all that success in the classroom and off the mat this year for your guys?
Yeah, it's just an expectation that we had coming here. We just trying to prep the guys for their future. And honestly, wrestling's going to end at some point. And you're building your own resume in whatever field you want to go into. And, we set a standard of having a 3.2 GPA on our team, because I asked our team, I was like, is it manageable to get a 3.2 at this school? And everybody said, yeah. So I said, that's a standard then. And a lot of guys are crushing it, and it's great to see. And in fact, our first semester here, we had the highest term GPA we ever had in program history, and over 18 years. And we had the second highest cumulative GPA we've ever had. And it's just recruiting and bringing in better overall student athletes, but also the ones that are coming in maybe at a little more risk. They have a lot of support academically. Our academic center, our academic advisors are there, our tutors are there, academic mentors. That's where the study lounge is, where our athletes go. But I think, and a lot of schools have that, but the other side of it is the one side is the resources and the other side is the communication and accountability. And our guys know that they are held accountable in terms of study hall hours and grade checks and just being on top of it. And the work is being put in and the results are showing. It was really cool for Terrell to be recognized as the scholar athlete of the year for the Big 12, because like I said, he has a degree in biomedical engineering. He's getting his MBA in 1 year here, and he has a 4.0 GPA, and so it's really cool to see, and for him to get recognized that way.
Yeah, pretty darn good. You set new heights, obviously, in the classroom, and you set new heights as a team this year. I know the dual season wasn't, undefeated, number one team in the country, but you made a lot of noise, especially early in the year. You guys hosted Oklahoma State back in November, set a couple of attendance records this season as well. I remember when you were telling me how you wanted to build up the dual atmosphere because you took away from NC State's presentation, other schools in the Big Ten, just, basically the best of the best around the country, and you applied it to what you guys had at Utah Valley, and then obviously invested more into the presentation of the home meets. How do you look back on year one, at least from a team perspective and in a dual perspective, and what you can improve on for year two, considering all of the success you already had?
Yeah, reflecting on it, I mean, we knew we wanted, like, the Oklahoma State duel is very strategic. I'm really glad that their staff worked with us to try to get it in the first semester, because the Big 12 schedule is changing. It's going to mimic a little bit more of the Big 10 and ACC schedule in the second semester. But we had the freedom this past year to schedule duels when we wanted, and it was nice to be able to get, of the 8 duels, maybe 1 or 2 knocked out in the first semester, just so you're not cramming everything in a 6-week span in January, February, right? And it just worked out great right before the high school season started. I think of the 50, whatever it was, 5,500 fans that were there, 1,100 of the fans were high school students. It was a big deal, right? And these high school coaches bringing their teams down. And I know Kyler Sanderson brought, I don't know, like over 100 kids to the dual meet from his club, and so just the support and the excitement was really, really great. And, we hosted Oregon State here as well, and had a good dual win with against them. And to be honest, I look back on it, the goal was to be 500 on the year, and that's great. Like, in my mind, I had to rationalize and just like be okay with saying, like, yeah, it'd be great to be 500 this year, coming from NC State, where we've had like an undefeated dual season, and so you're just like, I won't say like lowering your standards. You're like, well, that's even a stretch to try to get to 500, looking at the dual schedule that we had. I mean, we were on the road at NC State, Nebraska, Stanford, it's just, Missouri, South Dakota State. And to be honest, looking at our schedule, the crazy part about it was we had 4 duels this year, where with nationally ranked teams, where it came down to one match. And if one match goes our way in the dual meet, we win any of those duels. And like, we win all of those duels and we finish 11-5 instead of 7-9, and we win one of those duels and we finished 8-8. So you can't really take away from the progress. You like, it's so hard. In fact, my AD, after we won a dual meet, and I was not okay with our effort, more so like than the result. And my AD had to like calm me down. He's like, dude, it's okay. And in my mind, I was just like, no, it's like, I have a high standard for these guys, and they know it was like, the result should have been a little bit different with a little bit better effort and just fight and more strategy. But that's just the high standard we have then, we set for ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up too, because you had duels against, you already alluded to them, Missouri, South Dakota State, Northern Colorado, pretty much all razor thin, one match away. Is that now flushed away? I mean, again, you're already thinking about, the summer training, U.S. Open, year 2 at this point. Did you guys flush that away, as soon as possible, or did you use it as a learning experience even in the individual postseason, and maybe towards, maybe it's bulletin board material for next season as well, where hey, these are the things that we can improve as a team in this type of setting where this won't happen again, for next season?
Yeah, I can remember matches vividly from all the duels that we had that were crucial, and just trying to pull guys aside and just help them understand. It's like one of our guys, and I think the duel with Cal Baptist, just shot himself out, just attacked. And it was like, you needed to have a lot more focus in your finish, and you split your grip too soon, or you were bent over, or you weren't using good technique, and all you needed was one. It was a one takedown match, and just helping him learn through that process. Because I mean, the reality was 8 of our 10 guys this year were brand new starters, and so it's the same thing for like a guy like Terrell, where it's like he's a seasoned vet in age and like the experience that he had in the best room in the country. But the reality is this is the first time he's ever been to NCAAs. And so like having some grace for him and understanding like, yeah, you might make some mistakes because you've never been here before. And that's part of it, And so taking a lot away from the dual season, just because it was like, we were in some dogfights and again, we were that close to winning some other duels.
It's funny you mentioned how this is the first time these guys have experienced something like that. Then you mentioned Terrell, first NCAA tournament in that type of setting where he's the guy, he's one of the top 4 seeds, trying to make a name for himself in terms of, maybe becoming a national champion. Do you remember the lead up? Let's just go back to, 24 hours before the first round. What's the lead up like where you're coaching him one-on-one? He's talking to you and the rest of the staff, teammates, whoever's there. What is that atmosphere like? Is he nervous? Are you nervous? Or is it just like, hey, it's just a wrestling match at this point?
Yeah, I try to say, like, you can tell somebody it's just another wrestling tournament or just another wrestling match, but I don't care who you are. It's like, you understand the magnitude. You've been working for this your entire life. And the week, honestly, the weeks leading up to it were crucial, because 2 or 3 weeks before, like even before the Big 12s, Terrell, you could just have this sense, and he was good about communicating. I just feel this like intense pressure. And I said, from what though? Because we're still hunting people down. I kept keeping him in the moment, as opposed to like, he kind of knew at that point he had a target on his back, especially after beating Peyton Hall, and Cameron Amin and Hunter Garvin and, a number of these guys throughout the year. But I said, we still haven't accomplished our goal yet. Like we've been, because it was like at the start of the year, the NCAA tournament was so far away. Yeah. It's just like, I don't really have to think about it. But as it approached, we had to be able to process that information. I said, look, the emotion's real. It's always going to be there. It's always going to come. But like, you don't have to allow it to overwhelm you and overcome you, right? You can process and understand it is emotion, and understand that, like, where does pressure come from? Pressure comes from 99% of the time. It comes from you. It comes from internal, because you can read social media, you can listen to all these other people, but at the end of the day, like, you can choose to tune that out. And I encourage them to do that, just because it's like, social media isn't going to help you. It's only going to hurt you at this point, because somebody's opinion shouldn't matter to you, but for some people it does, right? Yeah. And just try to keep him in the moment, and just understand, like, what can you control at these points? Your sleep, your recovery, your workout, your effort, right? And your mindset going into this. So leading up to the tournament and through the Big 12s, like, we had regular check-ins, and I think it helped. It wasn't like we avoided it so long, then there was just this like huge meltdown, right? Where it's just like, I just am emotional, I'm feeling all these things, blah, blah, blah. And so basically, just the feelings that he was able to communicate, and we worked through it.
Did you have to have a similar conversation going into Friday night, where he gets picked off in the quarterfinals, and it's like, okay, now your season comes down to, you win, you're on the podium, lose, and you're going to fall, one match shy of the podium. Because again, when you're in the quarterfinals, and people might consider that round to be one of the best in the NCAA tournament, if you're not counting Friday night, however you look at it. But, dreams are crushed, dreams are realized in that moment, but yet there's still more wrestling to do. Did you have a similar conversation with Terrell? Like, hey, let's get recentered here. It's, just one match here, wrestle your best, and bring you back to center, so to speak.
Yeah, he's a great kid, great young man. And you'd tell he was just apologizing. He was just crushed. And I was like, don't be sorry. Like, we're proud of you, man. Like, proud of your effort. Like, we made a couple mistakes, and it happens, right? But the biggest thing that we want for you and for you to finish out is just coming back to get the next best thing, right? And he had to do that a couple of times because both of his losses were crushing. They were just end of the match, like came down to one exchange, and you have to allow some grieving and be able to process it. But I wanted to help him refocus. So like between the rounds, quarterfinals and the blood round, I pulled him into my room. We just watched some TV and hung out for an hour and just BS for a little bit. Because I knew once we got to the arena, because he's a very serious guy, which was very similar to me. And I just understood, like, you don't need to be locked in and serious and dialed in and stressed out the entire day and, processing everything from the previous match for the next 3 hours and not prepare yourself mentally for the next thing that ahead. Because, right, the most important thing is the next thing in front of you. And so we were able to hang out and just like laugh about a couple things. Like Timmy and I are roommates, and we just BS with them for a little bit. And then we knew once we were leaving, we were going to get locked in, and he did a great job. And it's a lot of emotion to process, right? It was a 0-0 first period, didn't take any shots. And once he got into that first exchange and they awarded the takedown, like you could see just like, boom, his just chest puffed up. Like, I'm not losing this match. And he did a great job. And I told him after, we celebrated and said, hey, just a reminder. Cause I tried not to tell him and think too far ahead, but like, hey, we have another round tonight. Cause he was so locked in that he just wanted to know, like, what do I need to know? And I think that's great. Like, let us process everything and just tell you, like, hey, you're going to be up probably in 4 matches. Let's get a little bit of food and water in. We're going to have one more tonight, and so he just did a great job. His inexperience showed at times, but then his maturity also showed. So just really proud of him and what he accomplished.
I like hearing about the behind the scenes of that roller coaster of emotions where, you're in the hotel room, you're just, gut busting, laughing at a TV show or just BSing with, the teammates and the staff in the room. Then all of a sudden he's able to get locked back in and then make the run that he did to the 5th place part of the podium. So as far as his preparation and the rest of the team, whoever's competing in the U.S. Open, or if they're going to train freestyle, whether it's, U20s, U23s, whatever the case may be, or even just getting ready for next season, what do the next few weeks look like for you guys in the room? Do you bring in partners that you might have not brought in until the off season, or is it different methods of coaching because now it's freestyle for most of the summer? How does this look now for you guys over the next few weeks and months?
Yeah, that's a great question because now we got into freestyle RTC. Like Jason Chamberlain pops in with our team. During the week, and then it'll be more once our guys get out of school, because we work out in the mornings both semesters, and it's been really good for us. But once we hit the summer, like, our guys are going to stay here and have part-time jobs or internships between. They'll lift in the mornings, and then we'll work out in the afternoons, and so it's more conducive to Jason's work schedule as well. And he's been really, like, today was pouring into our guys with just lace offense and defense and just getting our guys acclimated back to freestyle. Some of our guys have never done it. And a lot of our guys are training for U23s. They just have a longer training block to get ready for that. And that's more conducive to where they're at in their careers. Like, if they're not age eligible for U20s, there's very, very few guys who are ready for seniors, because that's a animal in itself. And so really we're just long-term planning, getting ready for U23s. We're planning on taking a really good group out there, because we just want our guys to compete. We want them. We're a really young team, and overall, we want our guys to get that experience. And U23s is always it's great, because it's like the start of the summer. You've trained most of the spring, and then before you flip the switch and get back to preparing for the next season, it kind of, I won't say a break. It's definitely not a physical break. It's more like a little bit of a mental break for guys to just learn and grow in the freestyle setting, because freestyle is awesome, because it when you think about, I can roll here and I can crotch throw here and I can do all these things that I don't normally do and folk style and get away with things. It's actually the opposite, because folk style, you can dive roll, you can get away with stuff because it's control. It's not exposure as much. And, if you don't sprawl, if you don't do the right things in freestyle, you're going to get taken to your back, or you do all the right things on the offensive side, and a guy can sneak points from you, right? And so like it really teaches fundamentals, and I think it translates really well back to folk style, right? Because you have to finish cleanly, you have to defend properly, and so excited for these guys to just compete and train through the spring before we get into summer.
So you mentioned all that development, and it's interesting you bring it up considering the team is really young going into next season, or is really young now. But you do bring a lot back, and of course Terrell's going to be hanging around. I guess unfortunately he doesn't have another year of eligibility, but he is going to be around the room helping the guys prepare and trying to achieve his senior level goals. How much of this is part of the developmental plan for your guys, especially the ones that maybe were just shy of the NCAA tournament this year, or what you plan to build over the next 2, 3, 5 years, I guess, reaching your long-term goals at Utah Valley? How integral is this summer of development, even with freestyle before switching back to folk style?
It's huge. This is way more important than last summer. In fact, the next 2 summers are way more important than the first summer. The first summer is just, you're trying to understand your athletes. You're trying to, because some of them, like admit, one of our guys that's going to drop a couple weight classes, he actually had to wrestle at 174 because of Terrell. He's a 165, maybe even 157 pounder, who's wrestling up at 174, and you could tell he just didn't have the horsepower. And he's like, when we sat down, he's like, I'm not going to lie, the end of the season really hurt. It hurt for me to watch these guys wrestle at the national tournament and just sitting there and digesting it. And he's like, I'm really motivated in this off season. And he's like, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think I accomplished my goals this year because I was not bought in completely, and that's on me. And I was going to say, I told him he's very coachable. He's very receptive to growing, to change. And I think that's why he grew throughout the year. He just was at the wrong weight class.
Yeah.
He knows it. But also he is right, where if you're not all the way in, it's really hard to win at this level. Not taking anything away from other divisions, but it's so hard because of the depth in Division I that if you're not locked in and completely bought in, like, you're probably not getting the results you want completely, or making the growth that you want to. And so, this off season is really, really important. And I want as many guys as we can competing at U23s. And some people say, like, oh, I'm not a freestyle guy. Yeah, well, I mean, is that because you don't like understand guts and laces and this and that? Because at the end of the day, I mean, I look at how many turns does Kyle Snyder have? Like, how many turns does David Taylor have? Like, a lot of guys in our country, like outside of like a Kyle Dake or like a Vito, like some of these guys don't have like monster turns on top, and they rely a lot on their pressure, their ability to score on their feet. And so I'm just encouraging these guys to I want you to compete in this off season, because again, if you don't compete, think about it. Some of you guys were done the first weekend of March, and you're not going to wrestle again until the first weekend of November, right? That's a lot of time to not have a competitive match, and so there's only so much we can simulate in the room where you go out, put a singlet on and get after it, and so I'm just excited to see the growth, because as much pain you have to go through in that opening year. And Zach Tonelli, he poured into me out in Vegas. He's like, buddy, he corrected me. He's like, buddy, you're not in year 1, you're in year 0. You're laying the foundation groundwork before you can take off and getting some new guys in and changing the habits and lifestyle and mentality of the guys who are there. And I'm like, you're onto something there. I hadn't heard of it that way. And it really is true, because you're still setting a foundation into year 2, right? Because now your rubber is really hitting the road, and you're taking these guys that are now super motivated because they didn't accomplish what they wanted to, right? And some of these guys that got thrown in the fire right away as true freshmen, they're antsy, they're itching, right?
It's funny you actually say year 0, because I was going to ask you how do you look back on year 1 of your tenure, because you've had the balance being a coach, being a CEO, doing a lot of stuff off the mat as well, just to get the program up to where it is now, and then to give it more of a ladder, and you have a bunch of steps you want to accomplish over the next couple of years. But it's funny you mentioned year 0. So how do you look back on year 0? Do you just say, okay, I was winging it here, prepared here, and then doing X, Y, and Z in this area? How do you look at year 0 now going into, we'll call 25, 26 year 1 with an asterisk?
Yeah, I try to prepare as much as possible with our staff, and like we have a staff meeting with just ourselves on Mondays, and that's actually what I was finishing up right before I hopped on here. But then also we have a staff meeting with our support staff too, and our academic advisor, our strength coach, our athletic trainer, our dietitian who works directly with our team. We're a team within a team, and just being on the same page and understanding the needs for the individuals on our team, but also the individuals on our staff and needs there, I think is really important. And so I won't say there were a lot of things in year one that we were winging it, because you want to have, I think when you wing it, you forget, like, how did we get there? Or say you have a good product, you're trying to remember what that process was. And when you don't have something go your way, or you do have something go your way, you have some data points to look back on and say, like, is our team going to be different year to year? Sure. Can you just have a template for your team? I don't really think so. I think you can have like rough sketches of what your training was like, or what you did well on your travel. But the reality is you have to constantly evolve and have these data points to be able to lean on, and also have something to be able to move forward and grow with. So yeah, I appreciate the amount of effort that our staff put in to this past year, and we'll definitely, like I said, have data points for this next year that will hopefully have us starting in a better way. Because the reality is, like, new head coach, new staff, new guys, new place, like everything was new. And so we made some mistakes. Our guys knew it. And like, luckily they had a lot of grace for us because they knew we cared. They knew we were trying really hard, and they knew that we were putting in the time that they needed to grow, and also, the accountability that they needed. And I think it puts us in a lot better position going into year one.
Yeah, I like that. Year one, we'll put the air quotes around it. It's funny that you say data points and this is growing, and where can we improve? The NCAA tournament had a big ratings boost especially on Saturday night for the finals. I think it was the most since 2017 or 18 in terms of viewership. It was over 700,000. So who knows? Maybe that keeps climbing towards 1 million viewers in the next couple of years. I'm interested in your reaction on, I guess, the more exposure for the tournament this year. I guess more discussion around the tournament, more viewership for the tournament this year, which is ultimately good for the sport. And do you take, I guess, data points or lessons from what the sport did as a whole for 3 days, what you guys can do as a team for duels and I guess other tournaments moving forward into next year as well?
Yeah, that'll be interesting, because two things immediately popped in my head that were unique to this tournament. One was Trump and Elon Musk being there. And, I know that Trump is a huge fan of MMA and wrestling. So it's like, if you got him there every year, I'm sure the ratings would be boosted, and who else would end up showing up. But the second thing that I thought about was just the storylines. So you start the finals off with a guy trying to accomplish history that'll never be done again. As far as I'm concerned, maybe the NCAA has something else up their sleeve, but
5 years of eligibility.
But you have two champs wrestling each other in the first match, and then you're ending it with one of the greatest college wrestlers I think of in my era wrestling, and then such a monumental upset match that I think that a lot of people were excited to watch this match. And it definitely lived up to its hype. And so it'll be interesting to see like what next year's storyline brings. I don't know, but it's up to us to create that narrative and just trying to do our part in like elevating the game and having new people coming in. And we're excited about the freshman class that we have coming in. We're expecting them to make an immediate impact on our program and also on the national scene. And like, we just tell them, you don't have to wait and don't put anybody on a pedestal. Like, you can be great now. Like if you choose to do the right things, be coachable, believe. And so it'll be really interesting with some guys coming off of injury, some new guys being entered into the field, and some studs returning. And so, I don't know. I don't know what it'll bring.
It'll certainly be interesting, considering NIL and the portal are a big factor, and I'm sure you and your staff are discussing that with your own team. If you guys are bringing people in through the portal, or you guys are leaving the program, whatever the case may be, that's a constant thing, at least in my eyes, for especially in wrestling, where it's not new, but it's not at the level of football or basketball, where I think it's managed differently. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think maybe for wrestling, maybe the portal and NIL is managed differently than a sport like football or basketball, where obviously those are the quote unquote revenue generating sports. So I guess first a general question on that: how have you approached those subjects with your team since last year? Where again, NIL, I don't know how much it's changed over the last year, but it seems like it does change every year. Then obviously the transfer portal with, I guess now some eligibility running out for guys, but guys still have the ability to grab medical red shirts. And obviously with what's been going on the last, let's say, week and a half, 2 weeks in college wrestling, the portal's been obviously a madhouse right now. How have you addressed your team over the last couple of weeks, regarding those two subjects?
I would have been addressing some different things. I feel like if Terrell was like a freshman.
Yeah.
So, I think he's a very loyal guy, and he's openly said, I want to help this program grow. And that's what I'm focused on. Cause I'm sure he got hit up by some other schools for RTCs and whatever, and I just know he's really, really devoted to being in this area and pouring back into this program. Cause he's such a grateful guy that, he understands the opportunity that he was given and wants to just pour into these guys who are here and give back. And so, but with the portal, that's a tough one for me. I just look at, there are not many jobs out there that you get paid before you do the job. They'd be like, I built some nice houses. Look what I've done. So give me this money for this house before I even build it. And you don't know what the product's going to be. That's pretty tough. That's a tough environment because there's I think going to be a lot of data points as well with the portal over time. And it'd be really interesting for somebody to see the number of returning All-Americans, national champs that end up transferring and what happens. Right. So I look at Parco and Teamer, but then also their teammate, Stephen Buchanan. So you look at it and there's a handful that you see success and some that don't have success. And, it really is tough for me. Because I think everybody's trying to get some, and, whether it's money, they're the athletes or the coaches, they're trying to bring in athletes that fit what they're about and what their weight class needs are. And, also the acclimation period, right? Because for some of these guys that have 1 year, it's a lot to be able to acclimate to a new place, a new team, a new environment, new training schedule, right? And so, I like to lean more on the side of recruiting our athletes, building strong relationships with them, getting them what they need, and I won't say hoping that they are loyal. I can't tell somebody what they should and shouldn't do with their career or what they should do with their opportunity to make money. But the reality is, like, if you're doing the right things in fundraising and building relationships around the program, I look at some of these programs like the University, like Northern Iowa, like look at how many guys leave there, like none.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to their staff and the culture that they built. And very few look around the country in places that people don't leave often. I think it's because of the culture that's built. So that's the thing that I envision and our staff envisions, just continue to build relationships and pour into these guys. And it is a little bit harder for us because the reality is you walked in here and at least 20 of these guys were guys that you didn't recruit here.
Right.
Right. And so the reality is some of them are going to leave, and a good chunk of who are going to stay are bought into the new mentality, the new culture, the new accountability. And that's great because that's part of the culture building.
With the Big 12, because again, you guys are a Big 12 program when it comes to wrestling, and the revenue sharing that's supposedly coming down this coming year. I believe, I think as we speak, they're discussing this in Congress right now, or they're going through the hearings right now. Are you guys does the school opt in to revenue sharing as a whole? Is it per program for you guys? Because again, some schools have, I'll use Oklahoma as an example. They're a Big 12 school in wrestling, but the rest of it is SEC. So certainly I would imagine revenue sharing is going to be on their docket and they'll opt into it. Then that creates the roster cap issue, which I believe is at 30 for wrestling. How does this work for you guys? I guess first on the surface, and how much can you speak or know about it to this point right now in April?
Yeah, I mean, they're still working through it. I asked our AD for an update, and he has some different things on his plate because the school they're looking at going to the Big West, which is a lot of California schools, and there's actually 3 other wrestling schools in the Big West, and I've just heard through the grapevine the Big West commissioner has no intentions of bringing on wrestling, so that kind of puts that to bed. But I know the Pac-12 is really searching, and the Big 12 is what it is. But it'll come out at some point. There's a lot of fight going on, but the Big 12 is going to require all member schools to be within the 30-man roster cap. And I know there are several schools that are not happy, and that was not their intention. They don't plan on opting in, and now we're feeling like they're forced. And so there's some, I'd say, some turbulent times right now in conference alignment or conference movement. And we're kind of just, I can't really make any moves personally because I'm waiting for our school just to see what they're going to do. But our school is planning on opting in. Our athletic director wanted to be ahead at the forefront, which is, I commend him for that, but I had questions for him too, because we don't have football.
Yeah.
We don't have, huge big time basketball. Like, our teams had a great year, had some record breaking years. And our men's team was this close to making their first NCAA tournament. They ended up in the NIT, and it was a lot of great class, but I just it didn't make sense to opt in because we don't have, number one, we don't have football.
Right.
And so, but he has a different plan, and I support him, and whatever that looks like, and wanting to see what the future holds. But yeah, we are going to be within the 30-man roster cap and having to manage that. So
I'm assuming that's a conversation for another day because nothing is actually official yet. Because I guess Congress and the NCAA and all these conferences are still working through all the paperwork and what's going to be approved, not approved. Have you given that any thought already in terms of that roster cap and how you're going to manage your roster into next year already, or is that something that's I thought about it, but it's on the back burner right now because I want to focus on the summer?
No, it's at the forefront. As we have some of these end of the year meetings, the reality is some of these guys are not going to be withheld, and some with the group we have coming in, the reality is they know that there's a possibility, like in some cases, like, look, if you're 4th or 5th string, like, the writing's on the wall for some of these guys,
right?
And that's hard. That's college wrestling. And what I really struggle with the 30-man roster cap is just you're gonna lose opportunities for some of these guys that need a year or two. Maybe they started wrestling in 9th grade, right? And they're really talented, or in terms of like athleticism, body awareness, but they're just wrestling is such a high skill set sport. I like to see it's a little bit like golf, where you have short game, mid range, and driving, long range, and look, wrestling top, bottom, and neutral. And there's a lot of skill to learn, and some guys are just on the outside looking in now because, a point in case. While I was at NC State, Michael Machiavello, he was recruited there, and he'll openly say it, and Pat will say it, like, he was recruited there to be a backup. He was a one-time North Carolina State champion, started wrestling in 9th grade, and honestly had a 500 record through his first under 500 record through his first couple years in college, and just needed time, just really, really wanted to win. And he went from under 500, red shirt, round of 12, won a national title, right? And nobody could have predicted that. Nobody would have said, but he's a guy that probably wouldn't have been recruited to Division I because it's just too much of a risk, and you have a scholarship, or you have limits now with the roster, and it's tough because I'd say for every blue chip guy out there that translates and finds their way, there's another blue chip guy that doesn't. And I'd say the same thing for probably like 3 or 4 out of, like, say, 3 walk-ons. One of those guys is going to be a big impact guy for you, likely, So there's going to be a lot more risk. And what sucks is a lot of programs are already getting ready for this 30-man roster cap. They started this past year. And what happens if the judge comes around and says like, oh, you can have 35, and just like all these kids are just, they were on the out, they're gone now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what that must feel like as a staff, as a wrestler. As you just mentioned, what if the cap gets moved up to 35, but they were released or cut last year, and now they lose a year of eligibility, and they have to go somewhere else, and who knows if they can even come back to the same school that they were just quote unquote released from, at least in terms of the program. Coach, couple more for you. Again, appreciate your time today. Talking ahead of the summer and just recapping everything for year 0, we'll call it. Obviously. Going into next year, national duels, big thing. The Invitational's coming in November. That'll be out. I believe it's in Tulsa at the Box Center. They released how the teams are going to be announced. I think it's the top 12 at NCAAs are automatically in, and then the rest of them are wild cards from it's like 13 to 24, and they're going to pick 4 of those teams. When you look at what they're trying to do for, I guess, the dual meet early on, a big invitational then with all these big schools, all these talented teams. One, what do you think of the format? Again, it's a bracket, and I would say the selection process as well. And does this, I guess, garner more attention to push forward for perhaps one day? I guess it's my just wishful thinking for a dual meet championship that results in your team national champion for college wrestling in the future.
Yeah, I think it's great for the sport. I think there's some teams out there that, whatever the payout, some of these schools, it's a big deal to earn a chunk of change like that during the year, and also compete for a title like that, because of those 12 teams, I don't think everybody's going to be in on that. I mean, Penn State perennially is just always like, yeah, we're all set, like, whatever. And so I don't know. And maybe it's, of the 12 schools, like 10 of them say yes.
Yeah.
And, now there's 6 schools in that 13 to 24 who have the opportunity to compete. And so I think it is awesome. And I think it's going to take monumental change for there to be a different type of schedule where there is actually a dual title recognized. Cause it's just like, well, why does the NCAA recognize like ITA or indoor nationals for tennis, and they also have the outdoor nationals, or now I guess it's split. So they have the individuals and they also have the team, they have doubles, right? And it's just like indoor track and outdoor track. Like, why can't you have a dual meet champion and also a tournament champion?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think what it's going to take is wrestling shifting their schedule. And to be honest, like, I believe we should go to a single semester for the individual season, maybe starting in, January and going through April and missing out. Like, we compete with March Madness for our national tournament. And like, the first couple rounds are so busy and so frequent. And it's like right during our national tournament. Like, why wouldn't we push it? Mm-hmm. Right. And the NCAA probably would work with wrestling because, we do have pretty good viewership. And also I've heard that we are one of a few championships that actually makes money for the NCAA. Right. So like, they probably don't want to lose that product, but you're not going to lose that product. People are going to support the dual meet championship, and they're going to go to NCAAs. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like, I truly believe it would be a win-win for the sport. And if we could get on board, and, I think half of it is getting the buy-in from all the schools, and half of it is the NCAA. So, I'd like to think with how much college athletics is changing that I don't think anything's off the plate, off the table right now, but I think it would take quite a bit of belief and shift in order to make that happen. Where you could, maybe it's like you have a month or like 6 weeks of duels, and then you have a dual meet championship, and then you take a week break, a couple week break. Like, maybe it's scheduled around the new year where just everybody gets a break, and then we get back into it and we start competing again in the individual part of the season, and you still have a really good product.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think single semester sport is probably the way to go, or a monumental shift in the schedule. I mean, maybe I'm optimistic. I think it will happen one day. I just don't know how soon that's going to be. You're a good you're a good salesman right here. Any chance you can bring the NCAA championships to Salt Lake? I think that'd be a big move for wrestling to get it out of a. I'm not gonna say bring it into a warm weather climate like Salt Lake in March, but maybe a new venue like that, bringing in the NCAA's over to Utah.
Yeah, we had actually talked about it, and through the craziness of everything going on with, unfortunately, our university president, her husband passed away unexpectedly, and she's been on a sabbatical for the last month. And she's a huge fan of our program and wrestling, and obviously our athletic director. And I, at some point, want to present that to them because, I mean, they have scheduled out through 2028 in Minnesota.
I believe so, yes.
And with how much Utah is growing and established, like the Delta Center in downtown Salt Lake is beautiful. They're renovating. They're doing a great job. Like Ryan Smith, who owns the Utah Jazz, and Utah Hockey Club is now moving and doing really well. And I think it would be great. I mean, you have a major regional, an international airport 15 minutes from downtown Salt Lake. You have just a thriving food scene, bar scene, restaurant scene, everything downtown. There's transportation. There's the subway line in and around the city that goes directly to the airport and back. It's just, you think about like Utah in March, and March, April is kind of like the interesting time. You might get snow and you might get 65, 70 degrees. Like we were at the park. I was at the park in shorts yesterday, and it was like upper 50s. It was a little chilly, you know what I mean? But the sun here, it hits a little bit different because we're higher up. And so, yeah, you could really get if you timed it right, and Lord willing, you had a good weekend, it could be in the 60s here and feel great, And so that's something that I'll bring up to our athletic administration, but it is a big undertaking because you'd have to be working with the local sports commission and put in a bid for it and demonstrate value. And I think we have a ton of value and definitely fans that would flock to the NCAAs, at least locally. Because I mean, if over 5,000 people showed up for a dual meet in November, I think you'd have a really good crowd at the Delta Center.
Certainly can get 18,000 in Salt Lake for the NCAA championships in March, whether that's 2029 or 2030. Sign me up. I'll put in a bid too, just to support the bid over to Salt Lake. Coach, really appreciate your time. It was great to talk to you again and catch up. Good luck with the upcoming summer, the U.S. Open, the training and the development heading into year one with an asterisk at Utah Valley. So again, really appreciate your time, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate you.
On3 Wrestling right here on YouTube. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Be sure to leave a comment. Check out our content at on3.com and follow me on Twitter. Follow Coach on Twitter and Instagram as well. We'll see you next time.